Hi everyone, I'm back with Emma Worthington, my 3-year setter at Cornell, just finished her graduate year at Duke. We're going to talk a little bit about the levels of Division I volleyball, maybe give some guidance to those of you who are in the recruiting process, and just talk about our experience as college volleyball players so far. I think elephant in the room as well, Duke is in the ACC, which is a Power 5 conference. And I think there's a lot of hype and maybe, reasonable hype around the Power Five and the ACC specifically, especially right now. Pitt was in the Final Four. What were the differences between, the ACC and the Ivy League on a competitive level?
I think that the ACC recruits a different kind of player than the Ivy League. I think that at least from my experience with Cornell, the players are like a little bit undersized, which isn't a bad thing at all. Obviously, like people get it done no matter their height. I mean, Jill Gill on Arkansas is 5'8" and was an absolute killer. But yeah, I think just that the athlete that they recruit in the ACC is a little bit different. People are jumping higher, touching higher. There's different angles that they're hitting at. They're making smart plays all the time where, I'm one to talk, but I think that there's a little bit of a mental lapse sometimes in the Ivy League. I think that's why the level of play is different. And it's not necessarily a bad difference. There's a lot of different types of volleyball as well.
Now, like in terms of, training and practicing, you talked about practicing a little bit more in the ACC, specifically at Duke, than we did with the Ivy League. That's because of specific rules that the Ivy League has in place. What were some things that you had to improve in your setting or just in general volleyball IQ when you made that transition up to the ACC?
It was different coming into Duke, and I was like, am I going to be able to keep up at practice? Like, am I going to be able to do it? And the way things were structured at Duke was very like skill oriented, and we would take a lot of time on servicing. We would take a lot of time on serving, like offense days, defense days. I think just being ready for practice every day, and not that I wasn't at Cornell, but like really being there mentally and physically, and being in my 5th year, that wasn't always the case for me physically.
Yeah, I mean, it's an extra layer for sure, right? And there's a reason why, maybe there's not a whole lot of like people talk about parity in the sport. Like there's a big difference sometimes between, different conferences and even like the top teams in the conference versus the bottom team in the conference. And so I think it's really exciting like to have this information. Like you don't get to hear this all of the time. What advice would you give to someone who's trying to figure out what volleyball the experience they want to have in college, right? So like maybe right now, let's say they have an ACC offer, an Ivy League offer, and then maybe another kind of, mid-major conference.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It really, at the end of the day, comes down to you and what you want. I would just go back to the feeling you get when you're at those schools. I think one of the main things is how you connect with the current players. You're going to be spending a lot of time with them, and if you get like a really good feeling with them and you connect really well with some of them on your visit, like I would say that's a really good sign. Whereas if conversation doesn't flow so easily, I wouldn't say that's a bad sign necessarily, but just kind of keep that in the back of your brain. But I also kind of went through this in my recruiting process coming out of high school, where as a 15-year-old, I was like, oh, I want to play like, for a top 10 team. Like, I don't care. I literally remember saying to myself, like, I don't care if I don't have a life in college. Like, I'm going to play really high level college volleyball. And then a year later, I had a not so good season, a not so good experience with a coach. And I was like, I'm literally crazy for thinking that. Like, volleyball is not my life. And if it was my whole life in college, I would probably quit. So I think, experiences also shape how, what you want to do later on in life. And as a 15-year-old, if I would have committed somewhere, I think as a 17-year-old, I would have decommitted and gone somewhere else. So just, your opinions change. Like, volleyball isn't everything, and it is for some people, and those people should be going to those Power 5 schools. But if you have, other interests, or you really care about your future after college and after volleyball, like maybe that Ivy League school is best for you.
Some people are probably upset with us right now because that's definitely the hardest part of it, right? Like know who
Yeah.
you are and what you want. It seems so easy, but can be really difficult. But I totally think that that's true. So thank you so much for coming on and talking with me. This was awesome.
Thanks so much, Sid.
Hey guys, it's Sydney. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Let's Talk About It. If you did, make sure to leave a review and send it to a friend. Let's keep this conversation going. I'll see you guys next week.